Good. So, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to meet all of you again here in this lecture series, guest lecture series. Just to remind all of you and remind the people who are joining us for the first time, this is a series of lecture mainly to highlight the importance or the link between the diversity, inclusivity in society and environmental issue. So different lecture with different topic. Today we are going a bit towards societal change and the link between societal change and the energy transition, which I think one of the major topic, because as you all of you know that energy is one of the sources that produce CO2. And in order to move more green, we need to make a real energy transition. But this transition most probably will create sort of change in our society. So today we have our expert, Professor Dario Minervini. Yep. He expert in this field, and he will give us like a short note for 1 hour, followed by discussion by us, and hopefully it will be useful for you. So, Professor Dario, the floor is for you.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation. I'm Dario Minervini from the University of Naples. I work in the Department of Social Science, where I teach environmental sociology and network for sustainable innovation. These are the two main courses that I'm involved in. Then I participate in master programs and other learning activities that are basically focused on the socio-technical construction of sustainability. Well, of course, what I'm going to present today is an understanding of energy transition, in particular in the field of energy, the ecological transition, in particular in the energy field, from a sociological perspective. That means that we try to, to complete the big picture that sometimes seems to be a little bit too much focused on the technical part of the story. We have to say that sometimes the main argument is, let me oversimplify the discussion. Sometimes it seems that we have the right technologies, we have just adopt them, and then we have the transition. Of course, things are more complicated like this. And I have to say that sometimes another oversimplified way to understand this kind of process is that people are not able to understand that the right technology is there, that people have a sort of lack of information or awareness, or it's a matter of ignorance. Well, in sociology, we investigated this topic, and this show up us that is not a matter of lack of information. It's something more complicated. It's a matter of socio-technical construction of what sustainability is. Sustainability is not, something there. It's a socio-technical construction that could have a very different way to be understood and to be translated in practices. Sustainability could be also very unfair. Sustainability could be a very tricky issue for some places of the world. But also, if we consider the transition, for example, in the field of mobility, we have to face how this transition will affect all those people that were, involved in the unsustainable economy and how they could participate to the transition in a fair and equitable situation. But these are just a few comments to allow you to understand how I'm going to problematize something that sometimes seems to be still there, just as a concept good in se. for us, sustainability is not good. It's we have to open the black box. We have to open circular economy, for example, another rhetoric about things that looks very fine and good, but then we have to speak exactly what we are dealing with. So I'm going to share the presentation, if this is fine with you. I hope this will work. Okay.
Super. Yep.
So I'm going to show the
Presentation mode.
yes, the just one moment, because it's not so easy. The instruments of Zoom are going to overlap that one of the, and I'm not able to, you know.
Yes. I think if you press
Okay.
Shift 5. Yes, it's working.
Okay, now it seems you can see it. Okay.
Not yes, now yes.
Well.
Yep.
Okay, let's start with this lecture that is called Energy Transition and Social Change. The title is very generic, more than general, but the aim was to open the discussion to insights that are not commonly debated. Okay, let's start from some theoretical assumptions that are discussed in literature, in the sociological literature, when we speak about energy transition. The first point is, and everyone knows about this, is about acceptance, social acceptance of green facilities. As I told at the beginning of the lecture, sometimes acceptance is just intended as a matter of ignorance or a lack of information, of lack of consensus, and conflicts are basically justified because people seems to be not able to understand how good is the energetic transition and the adoption of new energy, green technologies. But sociological research and understandings have shown how important it is to understand how sociopolitical or community relationship or the market dimensions of these stories need to be taken in account in order to understand why sometimes also when a green facilities or a green technology have to be translated in a place well, also in this case, we have to face with social conflicts because we have, of course, social condition, political situation, cultural and territorial features that have to be that we have to consider in our understanding. Then we have also have a complication if we speak about the socio-technical configuration that are connected with the different roles that the public and the policies place in such projects. In other terms, the public is not something undefined, something wide and, you know, homogeneous. The public is made of different sensitivities, different interests, different cultures, and these are definitely at the core of how green transition can be translated. Please notice that I'm going and again using the verb translation. That is absolutely important for my lecture. And in the next slide, I will explain why. Then we have this third point that is about trust. trust sometimes, again, is seen as a sort of automatic dynamic that regulates local communities. But trust is something that is, negotiated in local communities. It's something that is based on cultural, symbolic, and arrangement of relationships that features a specific place in a specific time. So we need to understand how trust works. It's not enough to speak about this company or this politician or this project is trustable. For who? Why? In which kind of situation? These are all questions that needs to be problematized. And finally, we have the point about sustainable practices. Sustainable practices are not something that are just there that need to be enacted because and that we have to convince people in order to act like that. There is a field of research that is called social practice theory that focused very well on how social practice change in time and place. This change happens because not only technologies are available, but because the sphere of the meanings and the culture changes, and because people learn to do something in a different way. Just think about how we have changed our way to think and act about our personal cleanness. We shifted from the bath to the shower for different reasons that are not only technical one, the bath and the shower, but there is also the sphere of the meanings. We have to clean ourselves very quickly in the morning because our life is going quickly and quickly. And then we started to learn how to do this, and so on and so forth. So these are the sensitivities that we adopt, we as a sociologist, we adopt when we face this kind of issue, like energy transition. Now, which kind of research topic I'm going to discuss with you today? First of all, with my colleagues, in particular Ivano Scotti, we studied not conflicts, but the peaceful experience of energy transition that were more interesting at our eyes because, sometimes we are too much focused on political conflicts in sociology. So we were interested in order to understand how peaceful experience happens. Just let's see what happens in the other cases. Of course, we studied how social proximity and the local networks of trust works within this experience. Again, we underline and stressed the emphasis on the situatedness of the relationship between the local level and the way in which local communities elaborate, negotiate, and performs collective choices about a decisional process that deals with ecological transition. And another point that was at the core of our research interest was how these heterogeneous assemblages of entities, technologies, actors, organization, identities, interests are mutually shaped and mutually shapes this same assemblage in order to enact a common program of action. Sometimes energy transition is explained, as I said, in technological terms, and this is a sort of technological determinism in order to speak about eco-transition. But sometimes we have also the so-called stakeholder approach that seems sometimes, of course, not in every case, but seems a little bit deterministic in economic terms. In other terms, sometimes we speak about eco-transition in terms of how local interests are arranged, are composed, and allows to a project to be convenient for all. This is not enough because there are people that are not economic actors, that the values that have to be considered are not only economic value, but are values at plural. And these values are very often embedded in a local context and are consistent with the community. Just a very quick look to how energy transition is intended from European Union. We know that we have this roadmap for the climate neutral Europe that is a very complex roadmap that try to detect the main pivotal factors that will foster the European Green Deal. We have, of course, a lot of emphasis about the social aspects. In this case, we can see this blue label where we can read "Leave no one behind." But then we have a zero pollution ambition for a toxic-free environment, preserving and restoring ecosystem from farm to fork, supply clean, affordable, and secure energy, mobilizing industry. You can see how unbalanced is this figures in terms of social and eco-technological aspects. In other terms, it seems that the social aspects are there just on the ground, just on the behind the main picture. After that, we can see also how and the differentiation between how Green Deal is going to work in Europe. Of course, my perspective is from Europe because this was our main, territorial focus. So we have a very high fragmented situation in Europe. If we speak of energy communities in Europe, of course, we know that the northern countries are more equipped from this point of view, in particular Germany and Denmark. In Italy, we are going to increase our experience in terms of energy communities, but at the same time, we have to underline that these trends shows us that we have different roles for citizens in the different countries in Europe. In other terms, energy community means completely different things in different countries. We have, of course, not similar organizational, but also management forms of arrangement of these communities. We are facing someone more, someone less difficulties to reach the ambitious targets of the European Union, and mostly important, we have no common regulation about this. So we are going to account for the number and the effectiveness of energy communities in completely different ways, comparing things sometimes that are not comparable at all, because we have no common regulation in Europe about this. Despite this very complex scenario, we hear every time policies discourses on eco-transition that speaks the language of transferring. Very often we hear about how important it is to transfer eco-transition. this transfer lexicon, it's quite strange from my point of view, because transferring means that I have a model, that this model is abstract, general enough to be transferred, transferred from a place to another. But this kind of, I have called this lexicon the argument of the best practices, looks very disconnected with the social territorial futures. And this could be seen when we hear about this scaling semantic. You know, I have a best practice. What I need to do is to scale up this best practice in order to open opportunities to the eco-transition. What I suggest here is to shift from the transferring discourse to the translation discourse. Translation means that there is something that happens somewhere that needs to be translated, not transferred, but translated in another place. And this means that we have to translate it in terms of cultural meanings. We have to translate in terms of movement. Translate comes from a Latin word that is traduco, that means to move, literally, physically move the experience from one place to another. So I have to move the meanings, so I have to move the materiality of the experience. I have to move this kind of, this is the movement that I need to focus on. So transferring is about a model, an abstract model. Translating is something about concrete and situated practices that need to be translated, and this means changed. There is no the one best way of eco-transition at all. So what we have done in our research was to look at energy communities as socio-technical assemblages that performs eco-transition, that translate in practice the discourse on energy transition. So energy cooperative could be seen as arrangements, assemblages that are orchestrated, but at the same time orchestrates intermediators that connect different identities of human actors, different interests, of course, but also different non-human actors. Let's think about an energy solar community. We have to connect the buildings with the sun, with the proper technology, but the buildings are also socio-cultural artifacts that, for example, could have cultural values in an historic center. I'm just making examples. How these different values can be composed within a socio-technical program of action that foster the energy community. This is at the core of our interest. And these performative assemblages enact and are enacted by a polycentric network. Indeed, energy transition is not something that could be intended in terms of bottom-up process or top-down process. In every case, we have different centers of decisions that need to be connected in order to implement, to perform the energy communities in a place. In other terms, we have to connect, of course, the formal and the institutional decisions that are made, for example, at national level or supranational level, if we consider the European community, but at the same time, we have to consider the local levels. Not only the local levels in terms of formal agencies, municipalities, but the formal way of the locality, the local communities works in terms of informal regulation. Again, social trust is not a matter of formalities. It's something that is deeply embedded in the local territories. And so we need to understand how this polycentricity works when we speaks of energy transition. Unfortunately, I can't see the participants, so please let me know if things are going well, if you can follow me, or if there are problems.
Yeah, I think it's going well.
Okay, so
Yep,
I can.
thank you. Yeah.
I continue. So the empirical focus of our research was, of course, the energy cooperatives. I'm going to share with you two research we made. The first one is an on-desk research about energy cooperatives that I'm starting to speaking about, and then the second one is about the program of action of a municipality, a little municipality where energy transition took place without conflicts, as at the beginning of the presentation I say to you. Let's start with this first research. So the first research deals with the energy cooperatives. We were looking at these, people that were involved in these energy communities as prosumers. Prosumers, I'm sure that you are familiar with this concept, is a concept that relates with the connection between the identity of producer and the identity of consumer. We can see a lot of examples, for example, in the case of food production. There are people that used to produce food in sustainable networks and to sell in a very short chain arrangements the food. So they produce, they consume at the same time in a very nested communities of prosumers. And this, of course, very often is related with the sustainability discourse that, of course, differentiate this kind of prosumerism from the mass production and consumption system. So the participants are basically prosumers who participate to the share of the plant. Of course, because in order to make these things work, we need to combine economic incentives with those social norms that are embedded in the local communities, and market community dimension are different, combined and prioritized. The case studies were two Italian case studies. Both of them were from the north region of Italy, Energyland Cooperative and Rete Energia Cooperative. And the core issues that emerged from the research was that the program of action to implement this kind of energy cooperative was cognitive, was a matter of mutual understanding of what they were doing, but also practical. In other terms, the practical issues were at the core of the debate in order to enact this kind of experience. And of course, it was a collective process. Then a very relevant issue was the intermediation. Intermediation is not simply a matter of political work, let's say, no, that people have to play in order to convince people. Intermediation is something also very material, because intermediation means that I have to connect interest, normative issues that are formal issues, are not informal issues, values that are not explicit sometimes, technologies, buildings, and other heterogeneous elements of the assemblage. And then again, this polycentric morphology of the governance of the energy transition. In other terms, how these kind of experience are connected and intertwined with the existent government architecture of the field of energy. energy communities arise not everywhere and not nowhere. They arise in a very specific situation in which rules and norms are still there and need to be taken in account in order to be consistent with the experience. So this is basically maybe the most formal part of the story that we need to address. Here there is this table that let us to compare these two experience of Energyland and Rete Energia. We did this research with Ivano Scotti and Natalia Maliani from the University of Trento. So we can see the first one, Energyland experience, was based on this program of action aimed to maximizing shareholder profit and saving from the renewable energy production and consumption. While Rete Energia had more at the core of the program of action to maximizing social and environmental benefits. So it was a little bit less economic oriented, let's say. The main focus of the first experience was the shareholding and the mutual benefit among the participants, of course. The second one was based on the value of cooperation. And the aim was, of course, the public benefit, not only the mutual sharing of the goods of the experience, but to obtain a wider impact on the community. Intermediaries that were working on this experience were a group of ecopreneurs in the first case. In the second case, we had the solidarity purchasing groups that are a very common model of organization in Italy, especially in the food sector, in the sustainable food consumption, let's say. Then the polycentricity was featured by the connection of three cooperatives sharing their investment in the plants and constructing a sort of administrative board that controlled this experience. In the other case, we had one cooperative consisting of nodes of 30 members that were connected with one small plant. It's a completely different arrangement, of course. Finally, what about coordination? In the first case, we can recognize the very common way to do things when we approach this transition basically in financial terms, so the limited responsibility company. In the other case, we have this representative administrative board in which we can have the delegates of each local node. So here we can see how energy transition could be completely differently understood, and the trajectories of how this cooperation among people can be very different. And this was just the first research that I wanted to share with you. Please let me know if this first was clear enough before I start with the second one.
I think so.
Yes, okay. So this is the story, the second research, and this is the story of Sasso di Castalda. That is a very little place in the south of Italy. And this was basically the peaceful history of energy transition. But of course, as I said, why and how this peaceful experience happens need to be investigated, can't be taken for granted at all. Let's start to contextualize. Sasso di Castalda was very interesting because it was the green point among the red one. In that time, when we did the research, there were a lot of experience of protest against the big. Sorry? It's all right?
I think it's okay, yeah?
Yeah, I've just heard something. Okay. This experience occurred among a different experience of conflicts that are the red dots that you can see in the map. So, of course, the sociological curiosity was very high in order to understand how this green point was able to stay there in a very conflictual zone in which protests against big and middle-sized green power plants were spreading all over the region. Who are these people we are speaking about? We are speaking about a very, very small communities, and mountain communities, in which a huge part of the territory is made of forests, where an important part of the people are employed in the agricultural sector, and where the local companies, of course, are part of this sector, where the political stability was a future of this community, and a community in which from 2004 the municipal council started to implement different energy initiatives. What were these projects that were running at that time? They started with a municipal-owned project of public-like system with renewables, basically, technologies. Then they planned to build a small wind turbine, again, a public-owned plant. They aimed to build an environmental educational center. They used solar panels in order to cover the town hall, the elementary school. They started with a program of efficiency of public-like system, used the first experience of eco-efficient municipal cars, so basically the cars that with low emissions. And then the most ambitious one that unfortunately was not realized was to construct this sustainable energy action plan that was basically aimed to construct a biomass plant in that place. So, what were our research analytical focus on this case study? The first point was about community dynamics. Of course, I'm going to enlist this, how to say, methodological features in order to be useful if someone wants to study experience like this. And this could be useful in order to address which kind of elements to look at. So the first point was, of course, the community dynamics in order to understand how self-consumption and resources were basically controlled, how relational proximity worked, how benefits would be widespread within the communities. And of course, this is a very important point, how environmental innovation, eco-efficiency could be linked with the local welfare experiences. In other terms, what happens when the municipality is able to reach savings from the new technologies adopted? In that case, the savings were used in order to improve the local welfare system, helping poor people or reinforcing educational programs of things like that. Again, how local governance were connected with the, the general discourse on energy innovation, and how governance means to understand how governance works means to understand how governance is connected, local governance is connected with the national regulation or founding schemes, or how pioneering innovators are able to attract investments or collect fundings in order to implement the experience we are speaking about. Of course, we studied the social perception and the environmental attitudes of the communities in order to understand how people think about risk and opportunities of energy transition. We studied the social and the local participation. In other terms, how local engagement works when the decisor develop a strategic line of development of the communities. And we started the actual green practices that would be involved by this transformation. In other terms, there is a very important need to look at how people use energy, and not only why people use energy. This is a very important point. Very often we speak about transition in order to implement an understanding of why people used to do things like that or not in other way. But what we need to understand before all is how people understand energy, how people use energy, and this allows us to understand how to translate unsustainable pattern of practices. So this is a very general scheme in order to depict the argument that I was developing about the key features of the research. So in the local greening process seem to emerge two aspects that are very crucial: the relational proximity and the pragmatism of the people involved. So the community dynamics, the first circle on the left, is based on the relational proximity, of course, of practice of self-consumption and local control, of widespread benefits, and is connected with the environmental local welfare, as said. At the same time, on the other side of the figures, we have governance and energy innovation that is intended as a useful technology that is pragmatically intended. It's not something ideological. And because of this, people were interested in order to look how solution could be effective in order to be connected with the community dynamics and community needs. Of course, the discourse and rhetorics are about equity, about ecology, about environmental protection, but the very pragmatic way of reasoning was very important in order to understand how to connect the dots in order to develop the experience. Here we have the story of the municipal biomass plant that unfortunately was not built so far, but just to understand how this technology needs to be translated within a social context that have its own futures. As said, we have a community with a lot of forest where people used to manage woods and forests as a local natural resources. So they were able to manage the forest, they were able to use this kind of resources. And this was why the project of municipal biomass was intended to be effective, because it was connected with the forest and a way of doing that was shared by the community. In other terms, this was a sort of commons way of reasoning. Commons is a theory, the theory of commons, that was elaborated by Elinor Ostrom, the first woman that won the Nobel Prize in economics. And she theorized that there is a third way to manage local resources over the market and the public. That is the commons way of doing. In other terms, people that take care of resources, local people that take care of local resources, are able to manage them when they are able to close the fruition of this kind of resources to themselves. Of course, there is a huge debate about how commons could be, not so friendly in terms of cooperation between communities. But if we consider just one community, the community, the connection between the community and the commons good seems to be effective when the community takes place in order to manage the local resources, but at the same time takes also responsibility with this kind of resources. In this case, the design of the idea in order to connect a new technology to the existing way of organizing the local resources, in this case, woods coming from forest, was designed like in this picture. Let's see some excerpt from the interviews that could be interesting to better understand this research. About relational proximity, we noticed that this was very, very important in shaping the community identity. So, for example, one of the people in the local government said, our citizens are watching us carefully. Literally, they control us in everything. Sometimes this situation is difficult for us. We are speaking of less 1,000 of people that know, everyone knows each other, you know. Every political local issue is discussed in the bar close to Hull town. So the informal and the formal places are completely mixed up in this kind of situation. Pragmatism appears as the mix of tradition and innovation. As said, pragmatism is a very effective way of thinking in order to connect what is there with what could be happen with the project. So traditionally, we defend these mountains. With those technologies, we are able to continue to shield them and also to have direct benefits. And this is not the logic of the being green energy companies that were those companies that in a way were contested in the other experience indicate with the red dots in the map. Here we have a very short synthesis of the a questionnaire, a survey that we did on the population. And what emerged was that we had different kind of attitudes about energy transition. We of course, we had this first group of people that we called pragmatic people, that thinks that environmental energy problems are serious and real, but they live in a place where these problems do not affect them so heavily. So they just had to connect a practical sense of sustainability, you know, how to sustainability style of life could be translated in the everyday life. There were also most innovative people, let's say people most connected with an idea to transform where the existing rules and regulation. In this case, we have people that acknowledge that also this little place is deeply involved in the climate change and the challenges that we are going to face in the next decades. Another group of people were detected as green local countrymen. In this case, what emerged was the participation to the social life and the political life, even if in informal ways. And then we had this, I would say, residual part of the population that we called civic green idealists, that was there a little bit more politicized in terms of arguments, in terms of perspectives, and in terms of also behaviors. They were the most, let's say, radical in their innovative green practices. To conclude, two main social profiles were emerged during this research. The first one was that one of the ecological modernizers, we could say. They formally participate to political and social life, have a positive outlook of the future, and adopt innovative green energy technologies. In other terms, we have people that have trust in the combination of economic changes and technological innovation. And this, in a way, are the ingredients that we need in order to foster an effective eco-transition. This is very common, also is very close also to the ideology of European Union that could be understood as an ecological modernization main actor, in other terms. The second social profile was that one that we called pragmatic ecologist. In this case, informal participation to social life and the deep interest in the problems of their own territory are connected in order to preserve traditional way of doing with the innovation in terms of local use of resources and social practices. Of course, both of them are very, let's say, community-centered. They look at the benefits that the community could gain if the eco-transition is fostered. So this is the final scheme of the green peaceful innovation. We have seen how relational proximity and the logic of ecological modernization are connected, that are the main way of understanding eco transition, are connected and translated one in another. This is the main result of the research. Relational proximity, that is a matter of embedded situation and connection, and the logic of ecological modernization, that is something more of formal regulation or formal discourses, are translated one in another in order to translate in practice this kind of argument, in order to implement a local green strategy that actually happened in Sasso di Castalda in that time. So that is the last slide. I hope it was clear. I'm going.
Yeah, I think it was very, very clear.
Yes.
And maybe it's, I think for our audience, just to reflect and connect this with other lectures, I think you give a clear example, very, very clear example of the connection between society and the green scales or green movement. So you highlight in all of the lecture that we can't move without the community. So we need the community with us. So this means that we need people. We need to include people in order to make decision to move more green. So this is I hope that our audience here today take this very bold message, because this is the main message behind all of this series of lecture. I have myself like a couple of questions, but maybe I can leave first the floor for other if they have some questions, and then I can put my question on.
Yeah.
So if there is any question from our audience. Okay, if not, actually, I have one question that maybe sort of higher scale related to the energy transition at the current situation, at the EU current situation and the conflict with Ukraine and Russia and so on. As you see, most of our governments now start, or not now, but just a year ago, start to move to use coal, use oil or petrol in order to produce energy. So how you can see this affect what we did over the last years to move toward energy, greener energy?
Yeah. Well, this I just can say something very general about this because it's a very big issue
Yes, of
that
course, yeah.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
It seems to me that we are not able, our government are not able to connect the big picture with the communities and the social practices, the embedded social practice. In other terms, it seems that we have to maintain the actual, the current way of production and consumption, the general way of production and consumption. It seems that we are not able to imagine how to reshape this kind of global flows of production and consumption. Indeed, we never heard speak about the growth, for example, the growth trajectories that maybe are those that help us to decrease the use of resources, the use of energies, and the use of the dependence from, strategic assets from other countries. In other terms, what seems to worry governments is to still maintain the status quo in terms of production and consumption. Of course, this means also to save jobs, to save economies, it's clear. But this means that we have to pay something to someone.
Yes.
And conflicts is what we are going to pay to maintain the status quo.
Yeah, that's
it's very cynical, but and maybe too simplistic, but this seems to me.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with you, of course. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to
Unfortunately. Yeah.
we have to wait. Yes. I have another comment or another question.
Sorry if I add a point.
Please. Yeah, please.
What this could be confirmed if we consider the discourse about recycling, that is, and the circular economy that is growing, and the rhetoric of political discourse. Recycling and circular economy are intended in order to maintain the status quo, not to shape a reduction of consumption. We are trying to be more effective with the technological fix to maintain exactly what are our way of lives, consumption style, and things that makes us different from others.
It's mainly aimed to keep the consumption somehow as it is, but find another resources or recycle the resources.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
This is a very dangerous way to understand.
Yes.
But this is my opinion.
But this is the truth somehow. Yes. I have one comment more or one question more. You in one of your slides, and you said that it's not only top-down approach, not bottom-up approach. It should be both. And one of your slides, you showed in the right of the slide the government or the innovation, and in the second slide the community.
Yeah.
So it's like the two approach, bottom-down and top-up. And then you mentioned coordination.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think, from based on your research, how we can do coordination between these two different communities? Because I think it's two different thinking, like policymaker or business people or government sector, they are looking at different level. They have different agenda than the community, the local community, the people themselves. So how do you think that people or the coordination between these two groups should work?
Yeah, this happens. First of all, is something that happens even if we don't look, even if we don't see it. What I'm saying is that political programs take place. So this means that communities are engaged or connected with policymakers, financial players. What could be very interesting to be done is to adopt the translation perspective in order to understand how heterogeneous things, actors, identities, and so on and so forth are connected and intertwined. In other terms, translation means to understand how these different, levels or layers of decision are connected. And so, yeah, in sociology, there is this field that is called sociology of translation. There are publications about this. This could be useful to, you know, if someone is interested, it could be useful to speak a little bit more about this, because it's a very useful framework to address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a sort of research behind this to find this sort of coordination.
Yeah. Of course, from my point of view, what I have as a sociologist, I need to understand.
Yeah.
In order to understand, I need to look at how things are connected.
Yeah.
And in order to understand how things are connected, I need to understand how things are translated from one setting to another one.
Yes, because I myself not a sociologist, so for me this is a bit far away from my comfort zone. But from my work in sustainability, I can see the transition in order to do this transition toward more sustainable development, in order to go more green, more circular, and so on.
Yeah.
We need really to find a way to make these two communities somehow communicate in a right way.
Yeah, but at the same time, we have to understand that we can't change things because we think that we know the best way to do this. Let me just recall an example. We are just running an H2020 project that will involve two countries in Africa, Zambia and Ivory Coast, in order to implement the off-grid plants of energy, sustainable energy production. During our interviews with K-informant or privileged people and so on and so forth, someone of them tell us a very interesting story. During a project like this, researchers tried to give to a community of fishermen the technology to store the fish with freezers. They rejected this technology because the fish, the way they used to store the fish was to I don't know well in English, to fumigate the fish and salt the fish. And they said this is the way to produce value with fish, not
to
freezing it. So this is a clear example that we can't say to people how they have to live and how they have to be more sustainable, because social practice are a matter of taste in that case, taste of fish, or cultural way of understanding.
Yes.
So this is exactly what I mean when I speak about translation. Translation means to shift from a cultural place to another one.
Yes.
From a material place to another one.
Yes, to be more flexible and make your model fit the culture of the new society.
Yeah. Just think about translation a book. You can't use the same words,
of course,
exactly the same words from one language to another. To have to translate, to shift the meaning.
Yes.
And this means to transform the experience.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think this is very, very interesting discussion, talk.
Thank you very much.
And again, I can see the value, the very big value here, because you give a very clear example of the main vision of the project. You show how these two things are linked together. And really, I appreciate your time, your effort for preparing this talk, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to thank our audience, and to inform them, just give me a couple of days, and the video will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, and it will be posted to all of you. So thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, Tamer. Thanks, Prof. Minervini. Tamer, I'm sorry for the audience, but many questions were unable enter to the room Zoom. I wrote you an email.
Yes, but you know, the Zoom room, we are here now, so it's working. So I don't know where is the problem, but it should work because, you know, I don't have any setting. It's even there is no password for it.
Okay,
maybe setting.
Yeah.
If you think that this could